Hey there guys, and welcome to this week's episode of Matthew Vanny Presents here on Herdix Reviews, and this week I'm going to be returning to my Regeneration box set reviews, and this week I'm going to be reviewing the most anticipated episode on this box set, the one that I've wanted to watch more than any other, and the one that you have wanted me to review more than any other. Yes, it is finally time for me to review the Caves of Androzani. So sit back guys and enjoy. So then guys, wow, it is time for me to review the Caves of Androzani, and this story is exactly what I was told. You know, I was told so much about how brilliant this was. I've seen in polls that it's been voted the greatest Doctor Who story ever, and I thought to myself, it's gotta be as good as it seems. And it's the most anticipated episode on the Regenerations box set, and the one that I've looked forward to watching more than any other, and boy, I was not let down. James came round to watch it about an hour ago, and it was, without a doubt, one of the greatest stories that we have ever witnessed in Doctor Who. Not just the classic series, but Doctor Who as well. So, let's get a few facts out of the way of the Caves of Androzani. So, it was written by Robert Holmes. Many of you will probably know that he is, without a shadow of a doubt, one of the greatest classic Doctor Who writers of all time. He is definitely my favourite Doctor Who classic writer, and this story proves to why he is up there with the best. It was transmitted between the 8th and the 16th of March back in 1984, and was directed by the one and the only Graham Harper, who myself and James have met before. A couple of years ago we met him at a Regenerations convention. We got a few things signed, we got to talk to him for a couple of minutes on his time on Doctor Who. Really nice guy, and he is without a doubt one of the greatest directors on Doctor Who. He's directed certain modern episodes like Stolen Earth, Journey's End, and in my opinion he's written the greatest classic episode so far, which is the Caves of Androzani. So, the plot is, well, very, very confusing. I'm going to try and summarise this as simple as I can without confusing anybody, but basically, in the Caves of Androzani, under the planet, there is a war going on for this rare drug, and I think it's called Spectrox, and yeah, there's a character who you will see on my thumbnail who is in the black and the white. He is called Sharaz Jek, and he basically has all of this Spectrox stored, and that is what they're fighting for. The government on Androzani are fighting him and his rebels and his androids to get this Spectrox off him. And he's basically trading the Spectrox with the rebels because they are stealing weapons from the government and giving them to him so he can fight this war and create androids. So he's trading Spectrox with the rebels. There's also a character called Trau Morgus, who I will get to also later on, and he has a very detailed backstory with Sharaz Jek, who basically is wearing that mask because Trau Morgus left him behind before in this mud burst, and it burned his face and scalded him to death, basically. Yeah, Trau Morgus is, well, he appears to be working with the government, but as you will see at the end of the episode, which I'm not going to ruin, there is a massive, massive plot twist, which I'm not going to talk about. So yes, basically there's a massive war going on for this drug, and the Doctor and Perry get caught right in the middle of it. That's probably the most simple plot. Probably not the best spot to advertise this episode, but believe me, I'll get on to why I love this episode, and I think I will convince you then how good it really is. So where do I start? Well, let me start with the villains. Now, there was kind of two villains in this. The first one was Sharaz Jek, who, as you can see, is a sinister-looking, creepy character, and he is one of the most creepy and scary characters that I've ever seen in Doctor Who to date. He came across at first as a really obsessive character, especially over Perry. Some of the scenes, you know, he basically, he abducted Perry and the Doctor, and he didn't care about the Doctor, he cared about Perry, because he'd been in the caves for so long, he became so lonely. Seeing Perry was like gold to him. He was touching her, he was stroking her, he wouldn't let her go, you know, he was following her, and he did whatever he could to not let her out of his sight, and at times, his obsession with Perry was quite perverted, and me and James were actually threw back at some of the things he did in the story. At times we thought, can he really do that? That is a bit too far. But in the end, Sharazjek's development throughout the story was absolutely amazing. In the end, like with Traumorgus, there is a massive plot twist. The ending to the story is up there with the greatest of endings, which I'll get to, but Sharazjek for me is up there with one of my favourite classic villains, because he came across at first as so creepy, but he was very vulnerable at the same time. He had great motives as well, and yeah, the character development for him throughout was brilliant, and he was so freaking scary, and his obsession over Perry was unbelievably creepy. Traumorgus, on the other hand, was also quite unique. He was not, you'd look at him and you think, he is the vintage enemy, like Anthony Amy's master, who twiggles his moustache, laughs like a Pantano-esque villain, and says, oh boo, he's behind you. No, he was a very, very good villain. He was very evil, he was very two-faced, and an extremely unlikable character, and he made a fantastic villain. And like I said, just like Sharazjek, his development was fantastic throughout this episode. There's a massive plot twist in part 4 as well, and the ending and the doom that happens at the end for Traumorgus is absolutely fantastic. The ending to this story, I can't wait to talk about that. But some things that really stood out to me when watching this was the acting. Now, the acting by all involved for the Caves of Androzani was brilliant. It's weird because so far in my Regeneration reviews, the acting has been pretty inconsistent. You know, I'm not going to go through all my Regeneration reviews, but you all know from my Legopolis review 2 weeks ago, the acting was pretty bad. But in the Caves of Androzani, it's like they just completely got a different... It's like the perspective on acting had completely changed. Even the characters that were in it for a couple of scenes, you know, everyone's acting was unbelievably convincing. And I just thought, wow, am I watching a different show? The acting was so different from the Goblets. Of course, they're different characters, they're different actors. I know, I'm not stupid, but the acting had improved vastly by everyone, and especially, of course, Peter Davison, the 5th Doctor, who put his absolute all into his final episode. And yes, I know, on Wednesday, myself and James put Peter Davison at number 9 in our 12 Doctors countdown. Many people disagreed with that, and I'm starting to regret putting him at number 9, I will admit that. I'm still content with putting him at number 9, because I still think he's around 7, 8, 9, but I'm content with putting him at number 9, but without a shadow of a doubt, his Doctor is amazing, and Peter Davison's acting in his final story was definitely some of the best that I've ever seen him produce. And his death as well was so freaking heroic, which again I will get to. And also the acting from his companion Nicola Bryan, who plays Perry, her acting was also absolutely brilliant. All the cast were absolutely bang on the money in this episode. And one thing that I can say about this story that I've not had to say really that much for any classic story so far that I've watched is the soundtrack for this story was absolutely amazing. It was captivating. I was taken back by how good the soundtrack and the music was in the background. It was used so well. You know, at times, you know, there'd be that really dramatic music in a classic story, and it would just be like dun dun in the most anticlimactic moment. Like the villain would look at the camera and it'd go dun dun, and you'd be like, really? Am I supposed to jump and go, oh, no. So at times, you know, the music was misused a lot in the classic series, but it was used to its full potential and used at the perfect times in the Caves of Androzani. There was a time when the 5th Doctor and Perry were about to be executed, and the drum, it was like drumming. Slow drum was like doof, 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 and it was getting louder, it was getting quicker, and it really helped build the intensity. This episode, especially in the 4th part, was so suspensive and intense. You could cut the intensity with a knife. This episode just had a different atmosphere, I think, to any episode that I'd seen previous. Me and James described it as that this episode was kind of on a different level. You know, everything was just a level and a league above anything we'd ever seen before in the classic series. The soundtrack, absolutely amazing. The acting was above anything we'd ever seen in the classic series before. The direction by Graham Harper was absolutely outstanding. Some of the scenes, some of the camera angles, along with Robert Holmes' script, worked together in perfect harmony. Honestly, some of the scenes were so intense. There was a confrontation scene between the Doctor and Sharazjek, which was so freaking intense, and the atmosphere in this episode was amazing. I think they took a much more darker, eerie route with this story, which they obviously then went to use a lot more frequently in the 6th and the 7th Doctor's era, which I think in the end kind of admitted to the downfall of Doctor Who. But in the Caves of Androzani, the darker side of it, there was a scene where two rebels were fighting on a cliffside, and one of them literally strangled the other and nearly poisoned him and threw him off a cliff. Yeah, it was pretty dark at times, but that was brilliant, and I couldn't take my eyes off this episode for that very reason. The fact that there was always something going on, and some of the things in this episode, including Sharaz Jek's obsession with Peri, some of the violence in this episode, you couldn't take your eyes off it. You were taken back by it, but at the same time you were like, okay, that's a bit weird, but then you were like, this is really interesting. And this episode, basically to sum it up, it was unlike anything I'd ever seen in Doctor Who before. Everything was on a higher level. The acting, the soundtrack, the direction, everything was absolutely brilliant, and the story was extremely intense. I could not miss a scene. There were times when me and James, I was writing some notes down and I'd miss a scene and I'd have to rewind it. So yeah, I could not miss a second of this story. And one thing I loved about it as well is that the Doctor was not central to the plot. Now, in the 10th Planet, which I reviewed firstly in the Regenerations box set review, I was disappointed that the first Doctor did not have an impact in his final story. Obviously, that was due to his illness. So I thought that his final story worked well without him, which sounds harsh, but it kind of did. But the 5th Doctor's story, he was in it a lot, and you know, there was a massive part to play because he'd basically been him and Peri had been poisoned, and I can't remember what it was called now, but they'd been poisoned by the Spectrox. I think it was Spectrox toxamine or something like that, which was slowly killing them throughout the episode. But yeah, her and the Doctor were basically fighting to survive, and he was spending most of it trying to get Peri back from Sharaz Jek, who just would not let her go, and at the same time he was trying to get peace in Androzani, but all this different war was going on and it was just chaotic. So it didn't revolve around the Doctor because there was a war going on. Him and Peri were just caught in the crossfire, but I loved the fact that it was not revolved around him, but the impact that it had on the Doctor and Peri was so large in this episode. So, what I want to talk about most in this story, more than anything else, is the ending. The ending is out of this world. Of course, I'm not going to ruin it for you because this is if you were to have a shopping list and if you are planning on buying any Doctor Who classics, honestly, I recommend you buy this first before any other. The ending was so incredibly intense. It was so climactic. It was suspensive. The music was unbelievable. You know, the Doctor was fighting to save Peri. You know, the androids and the rebels had came together. There was war going on, and Trau Morgan was fighting against Sharaz Jek, and all the androids were fighting. It was just chaos. Absolute chaos. There was always something looking at. It was so quick and simple. You're like, oh my god. And there was a character, I can't remember what his name was now, actually. A character that Jamie really liked. I think he was called Stotts, and he betrayed the rebels to go with Trau Morgus, and his death was absolutely amazing. So the humans came back, they killed him, and it was just, oh my god, the ending was just out of this world. And the 5th Doctor's death was probably one of my favourites ever. You know, we in the Regenerations Countdown we did a couple of weeks ago, I did say that Matt Smith's Regeneration was my favourite, but when it comes to Doctor deaths, I think this one is my favourite. I mean, the way that he fought tooth and nail to get back on Androzani, to fight, to find this bat's milk, which obviously you've all seen in the Regeneration scene. It heals Peri from it heals her from Spectrox toxamine, which they both are suffering from, the disease they're both suffering from, and he fights tooth and nail to get that antidote and that antitoxin, and he carries her out of the blown up Caves of Androzani to the TARDIS, and of course the Regeneration scene, which we've all seen, is up there with the greatest. It was beautiful, the way that the 5th Doctor's companions were spinning around his head, saying, "Don't die, Doctor." The Master came in and was like, "Die, Doctor." And his final words were Adric, which is just heartbreaking. His regeneration was amazing. Then it led to the 6th Doctor's first moments, which, yeah, I didn't like. I just thought that the 6th Doctor was pretty arrogant, pretty stuck up, and I think a Doctor needs to make a very good first impression, and the 6th Doctor's was instantly unlikable. So, I've kind of rambled on a bit, and I'm sorry if this review has been slightly rambling, but there's so much to talk about in this episode. There's so many amazing things. I'd love to talk about it for longer, but I think it's time for me to conclude my thoughts on the Caves of Androzani. So, Summing up all the rambling that I have just gave you, The Caves of Androzani was a thrilling, captivating, enthralling 4-part story written perfectly by Robert Holmes. The direction from Graham Harper was unlike anything I'd seen before in the classic era, and for the first time I can say with confidence that the soundtrack was absolutely amazing, adding so much intensity and suspense into each episode. The acting all around was pitch perfect, especially by Peter Davison, who put his all into the final story, and as did all the other cast as well. They were flawless. Myself and James were immersed by the brilliant characters, especially Shara's Jack, who was extremely creepy and scary, but his backstory and character development through this story was magnificent. Traumorgus was a very vindictive, manipulative villain who wasn't too cliched and had brilliant motives. The way the Doctor wasn't central to the plot but yet got caught in the middle of it was extremely clever writing by Robert Holmes. The regeneration is up there with the best. The Fifth Doctor's death was extremely heroic and selfless, and his regeneration was beautiful, minus Peri's cleavage of course, with a final word that stabbed our hearts: Adric. The only downfall to this story was the Sixth Doctor's first moment, which instantly seemed stuck up and arrogant, but did not affect the story in any way, shape or form. Myself and James entered this story with high hopes and came out gobsmacked with how outstanding this story was. Everything was improved and on a higher level than any classic story we'd seen previous, and we both definitely said it's definitely up there with the greatest stories of all time, and myself and James agree that this is our most highly recommended classic Doctor Who story to date. Without a shadow of a doubt, The Caves of Androzani gets a 10 out of 10. I literally could not think of one thing that was wrong with it. Everything was perfect, and it just seemed a step above every other classic story I had seen previous. Too bad this was the final good story between the downfall that was the late 80s in Doctor Who. Nevertheless though guys, I hope you've enjoyed my review of The Caves of Androzani, and before I go, I'm going to be answering a couple of comments from last week's video of mine, which was Sherlock Week, which was do Mark Gatiss and Stephen Moffat belong in Doctor Who or Sherlock? Glad you have got past your hatred for Moffat to come to a logical conclusion. Well, my hatred for Moffat has passed for now, but with Stephen Moffat you really never know what could be round the corner. He is probably the most unpredictable writer in Doctor Who, and probably the most inconsistent. Series 8 could be completely ruined by Moffat, or he could make it the greatest series in the modern era. My hatred for Moffat originally obviously came from the ending to 2011. Series 5 was brilliant, but Series 6 was built up in such a way. I was busting my mind. Me and James were both busting our mind. How could the Doctor survive? We were discussing it for weeks and weeks on end, busting our brains with all these different theories. And The Wedding of River Song was the biggest cop-out piece of that I've ever watched. You will know if you follow the channel that it is my most hated Doctor Who episode ever. Nevertheless, he redeemed himself despite The Doctor, the Widow and the Wardrobe being just so freaking bad. He ended 2013 in the only way he could. Under the pressure he was on, he pulled off the 50th, the casting, he was brilliant. The way that he got all 13 Doctors in the story was amazing. Peter Capaldi's cameo, Jesus Christ. Tom Baker's return, and the ending with all the Doctors together, just my feels. And the time of the Doctor was the perfect departure for Matt Smith. The way that he was able to bring in all different aspects of Matt Smith's era, he connected them in not a over-complex way, in an understandable way for any people who are, well, thick. And the regeneration had me in tears. I'm not afraid to say, as an 18-year-old guy, I was crying my fucking eyes out at the at Matt Smith's regeneration scene with, you know, and Amy, and oh my god, it was just beautiful. So Moffat, my hatred for you has passed for now, but I'm definitely not putting any money on you creating an awful episode in the future. So with Series 8, we'll have to wait and see. I agree with all the places you put them, but I'm not 100% sure about Mark Gatiss. Also, I've never watched Sherlock. Could you persuade me, and maybe others, to start watching it? Well, Mark Gatiss was a very difficult one because he's written good and bad for both Doctor Who and Sherlock. I think he's been more inconsistent with Doctor Who, but he has written some very good stories at the same time. With Sherlock, he's written my favourite episode, The Hounds of Baskerville. He's written some absolutely outstanding episodes for Sherlock, some of my favourites, and I do think he is the best Sherlock writer out of the three. So I think overall he just belongs in Sherlock. But about Sherlock as a programme, you've never watched it, you don't know what you're missing out on. I mean, I'd not watched Sherlock up until well, New Year's Day this year. So for my advice for you is to definitely catch up on it. I was lucky in the fact that James had series 1 and 2 in a box set for me, but if you can, go online, buy the box set, whatever. It literally took me a couple of days. That's the beauty of Sherlock. 9 episodes, so it's, well, for me it was 6 episodes at the time, not including series 3, so it took me a matter of days to catch up on it. That's the brilliance of Sherlock. So I would highly recommend you go out, watch Sherlock, catch up on it. It's very complex, so you cannot miss a scene, and it's very hard to get your head around at times. Some of the stories are absolutely outstanding, so without a shadow of a doubt, my friend, definitely watch some Sherlock. I agree with Gattis belonging in Sherlock. I never remembered the Crimson Horror, and when I watched it, I ended up putting focus on other activities. Moffat, you hit exactly perfect. He was on a roll with my favourite episodes, then all downhill. The thing is with the Crimson Horror, it's not an episode that I hate. There's nothing in it that I really dislike, apart from that old woman villain. What was her name? Was it Mrs. Bitchflower? But nevertheless, I just thought that she was just such an unlikable, stupid, cliched old woman, and that little creature thing, I don't even know what that was. You know, I was just, while watching this episode, like you said, I just got distracted. I didn't really care for the plot very much. I didn't care for the characters. The only thing I cared for was when Jenny stripped down in that tight leather suit. Wow. Nevertheless, it's an episode that I wouldn't exactly put down in the worst ever, but I would not really put it down in the best ever. It's not an episode that I would be bothered if I never saw it again. So then guys, thank you for watching this week's episode of Matthew Annie Presents my review on the Caves of Androzani. I'm still shell-shocked at how good this story actually was. So don't forget to, of course, drop a like on this video, subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and please do comment below your thoughts on the Caves of Androzani. If you've watched it, tell me what you liked about it, what you loved about it, even some things that you may not have liked about it. Give me your own little mini review and your rating out of 10 in the comment section below, and of course I will read them out next week, and next week's review is going to be, of course, the next episode in this box set, which is Time in the Rani. Yeah, I'm not judging it, but from a little voice in the back of my head, I'm not looking forward to it that much. That's going to be one fun review. Anyway, so of course, yes, if you have not got the Caves of Androzani, this should be the first story on your shopping list, guys, so go online, go wherever you can, get this story as quickly as you can. So, if you want to stay updated on the channel, just go to the link that is at the bottom of your screen. Yes, the URL is not above or below, stupid me. It is on your screen right now. Follow that and you can find the website where you can follow everything and anything that happens on the channel, including our Facebook page, Twitter page, Tumblr, which we don't use nevertheless. Go on that website and you'll be able to stay updated on everything that's happening on the channel. This Sunday, I do believe that we are planning to do a discussion on the Matt Smith rumoured cameo. Call it rumoured, call it confirmed, call it whatever you like. But yes, myself, Owen, Tom, Jacob, Harry, whoever else, I don't have a clue, we're all going to be discussing whether Matt Smith should return in Series 8, because a few of us, I think, will have a few mixed opinions, which is going to be very interesting. So guys, thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to give me your opinions below. I'll read them out next week, and until this Sunday, have a good weekend, guys. Take care, and I'll see you then.